Thank you for joining us today for another episode of The Liz Wheeler Show. I'm your host, Liz Wheeler. If you haven't subscribed to the show, could you do that at this moment before we get started? Go to Spotify and search The Liz Wheeler Show, hit subscribe, leave us a 5-star review. Greatly appreciate everybody who has been subscribing on Spotify lately. That helps us a lot. It helps other people discover the show. You know what we do here? We seek the truth. We expose corruption. People are hungry for what's real and what's not real, and we try to create some order in the chaos of our society. So if you could, go subscribe on Spotify, maybe share it on your social media accounts so that other people can join us here, our community, our mission. All right, on the docket for today's episode, we have a couple of important things that I want us to discuss today, and I want you to take part in the discussion too, so make sure that you're tuned into the live chat on YouTube, the live chat on X, the live chat on Rumble, the live chat on Facebook. The first thing we're going to talk about is the text messages that Tyler Robinson, that would be Charlie Kirk's alleged assassin, sent to his transgender lover, who went by the name Lance Twiggs. The Utah County prosecutor yesterday, during a press conference unveiling the charges against Tyler Robinson, also revealed these text message exchanges between the two of them. And this has started a lot of discussion online. There's been a lot of questions because the back and forth is quite odd. It seems like the way that these two young men were conversing was not normal. It seems quite abnormal. It's led a lot of people to ask, were these text messages that were released by the Utah County prosecutor, were they fabricated or are they real? And if they were fabricated, by whom were they fabricated? So we're going to dive into that question and try to provide some clarity and some answers on that. In that same press conference, there were also some significant revelations from the Utah County prosecutor about Tyler Robinson himself, who he was, what motivated him, his ideology, his politics, and we're going to show you some of that video. Also, the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, has widened their investigation into radical transgender groups that advocate both communism and violence. We briefly touched on this in yesterday's episode. Well, today we are going to be unveiling the leader of this group, Armed Queers. Breaking news, the leader of this group, we talked about the leader, Ermaya, yesterday. Well, breaking news, it's a man, it's not a woman. Ermaya transitioned from a man, quote unquote, into a woman in high school, and we will be unveiling his ties to Roy Singham today. Also, towards the end of the show, and you're going to want to stick around for this, and I want your input on this question, we're going to talk about why we don't, in this country, just ban communist groups. We have the legal authority to do so. Why don't we do this? All this and more today on The Liz Wheeler Show. Today's episode is proudly sponsored by All Family Pharmacy. Are you tired of doctors telling you no, you can't get prescriptions for affordable, off-patent medications, or insurance won't cover what actually works for you? Well, if this is you, you are not alone. Millions are also frustrated with, it's not just a broken healthcare system, because if it was broken, that insinuates that we could fix it. It is a corrupt healthcare system. Get out of it. All Family Pharmacy is your way out. They're a patient-first, independent pharmacy. They connect you with a licensed U.S. doctor who approves your prescription online. It's fast, it's legal, so there's no gatekeeping. There's no insurance middlemen. There's no red tape. They offer affordable, high-demand medications that are often hard to access. I'm talking ivermectin, for example. At All Family Pharmacy, it starts at just $2. Mebendazole, hydroxychloroquine, antibiotics, NAD. It's super easy. You order online. It takes just minutes. Then a licensed doctor reviews and approves your prescription. Medications ship straight to your door, so no clinic visit necessary, no hassle. Everything is secure, HIPAA compliant, and pharmacist reviewed. You choose the medication, not an insurance company or an indoctrinated physician. Real healthcare freedom means you decide what's right for your body. It's time to put your medical freedom back in your hands. Visit allfamilypharmacy.com/Liz. And because you are part of this movement, use code Liz10 at checkout for an exclusive discount. That's allfamilypharmacy.com/Liz, code Liz10. Allfamilypharmacy.com/Liz, code Liz10. So yesterday, Jeff Gray, that is the name of the Utah County attorney, the prosecutor who's going to prosecute the case against Tyler Robinson, the man who allegedly assassinated Charlie Kirk. He led a press conference where he announced formal charges against Tyler Robinson. Now, Robinson was charged with aggravated murder, along with 2 counts of aggravated assault, 1 count of felony discharge of a firearm, and 1 count of possession of a dangerous weapon by a restricted person. The prosecutor said they will be seeking the death penalty. Now, none of this is particularly surprising. We anticipated what charges Tyler Robinson would face. We anticipated that the prosecutor would seek the death penalty against him in Utah. The death penalty is carried out by a firing squad. We may see that happen. None of this, while it is a good thing that charges have formally been brought against Tyler Robinson, none of this is particularly surprising. We expected those things. We expected those charges. We expected the prosecutor to bring the death penalty. However, what is noteworthy is what the prosecutor announced regarding Tyler Robinson's political ideology, what motivated him to allegedly carry out the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And the source for the prosecutor's statement about Tyler Robinson's ideology is, in a sense, something that is inarguable, because a prosecutor cited Tyler Robinson's mother. This is what he said.
Agreed. Robinson's mother explained that over the last year or so, Robinson had become more political and had started to lean more to the left, becoming more pro-gay and trans rights oriented. She stated that Robinson began to date his roommate, a biological male who was transitioning genders. This resulted in several discussions with family members, but especially between Robinson and his father, who have very different political views. In one conversation before the shooting, Robinson mentioned that Charlie Kirk would be holding an event at UVU, which Robinson said was a stupid venue for the event. Robinson accused Kirk of spreading hate. Robinson's father reported that when his wife showed him the surveillance image of the suspected shooter in the news, he agreed that it looked like their son.
I can't imagine. I simply can't imagine. We'll get to the parental role here. The parental role in forming children. The parental responsibility when children turn out to be. I think it would be accurate to describe Tyler Robinson as one of the worst people that our country has ever known. We'll talk about the parental role in a minute, but I first want it to be established without question that this is the moment that should definitively end the gaslighting by the mainstream media. It should definitively end the mass propaganda operation that you and I have discussed over the course of the past couple days, where the mainstream media, and it's not actually just the mainstream media, it's bigger than that. It's the entire leftist apparatus. The mainstream media is a critical part of that, but so are Democrat politicians, so are influencers on X, so are celebrities, so are cable news and network television, and they are engaged still in a mass propaganda operation trying to convince you that Tyler Robinson was a Republican, that Tyler Robinson was a right-winger, that Tyler Robinson was a MAGA ideology, that Tyler Robinson hated Charlie Kirk because Charlie Kirk wasn't conservative enough, that Tyler Robinson was a groyper. None of that is true. It was never true. There was never any indication that it was true. And yet the mainstream media and Democrat politicians and Democrat leftist talking heads on cable news TV and influencers on X and the entire Democrat apparatus was engaged against you to try to form in your mind a perception, a false perception of Tyler Robinson before the truth could definitively be established. Well, let it be shown that the truth today has been definitively established, and any member of the left who continues to propagate the malicious lie that Tyler Robinson was on the right should be fired from their job, period. Because that kind of propaganda contributed to the creation of Tyler Robinson. There's another portion of this press conference held by the Utah County prosecutor in which he talks about Tyler Robinson's statement about why he shot Charlie Kirk. Take a look at this.
Lingering. Roommate, why? Robinson, why did I do it? Roommate, yeah. Robinson, I had enough of his hatred. Some hate can't be negotiated out. If I am able to grab my rifle unseen, I will have left no evidence. Going to attempt to retrieve it again. Hopefully they have moved on. I haven't seen anything about them finding it. Roommate, how long have you been planning this? Rob.
He had had enough of this hatred. This type of hatred can't be negotiated. What hatred? What hatred are you talking about? There's no hatred. At least not from the right. Not from the right aimed at the left. The belief that Christians or conservatives or Trump supporters hate LGBTQIA people is false. Yeah, there are a lot of us, especially Christians, who believe in a biblical worldview, who believe that God made us man and woman, who believe that God made sex to be part of marriage and that marriage is between one man and one woman. And so, yes, we devoutly believe that same-sex sexual activity is immoral. We devoutly believe that a man is a man and can't transition to a woman. That's not hatred. It is out of love that we speak this truth to other people. The only reason that someone like Tyler Robinson would believe that a Christian or a conservative viewpoint on marriage and sex and gender is hateful is because this is what the mainstream media and Democrats have been telling him for the last decade. They've been saying we're bigots, we're homophobes, we're transphobes, we're xenophobes, we're fascists, we're authoritarian, we're dictator. When you drum into a vulnerable, probably mentally ill young person's mind over and over and over from their earliest memory that the other side hates them and is a fascist, what do you think they're going to believe? The mainstream media and Democrat politicians are singularly responsible for what happened here. And I want to show this video. I don't sit here and make a claim that the mainstream media and Democrats have spent the last decade calling Republicans fascist without the receipts to prove this. Take a look.
Let me ask you tonight, do you think Donald Trump is a fascist?
Yes, I do.
This is what kicking the shit out of fascism looks like.
Try to prevent the spread of the lawlessness and the fascist chaos that's been unleashed against us.
So when we say Donald Trump is a fascist, fascism, a huge component of fascism is uniting racism, bigotry, a form of racist nationalism.
We are now living in a fascist dictatorship.
Mm-hmm. And we are worried about potential rise of fascism in this country. We're worried about our democracy falling to an authoritarian and potentially fascist form of government.
Not only to roll over to Donald Trump's will, but to roll over our democracy and allow him to take over this country as a fascist dictator.
When fascism isn't just coming, it's already here.
The former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley, said, "No one has ever been more dangerous to this country than Donald Trump, and he is a fascist to his core."
Think about who spoke those words. These are the most prominent mainstream media personalities and highest ranking Democrat politicians in our country. AOC, Eric Swalwell, Kamala Harris. Then we had Rachel Maddow talking to Jen Psaki, Joy Reid, Tim Walz, drumming over and over and over the lie that Republicans are fascists. Make no mistake, the mainstream media and the left and Democrat politicians are to blame for the belief, the lie that Christians and conservatives hate anybody else. The prosecutor, the Utah County prosecutor, also read the text message exchange. And I know that this has sparked a lot of discussion online, and I want to dig into the veracity of this text message exchange between Tyler Robinson and this transgender individual whom he was engaged in a romantic relationship. The guy's name is Lance Twiggs. I think he went by Luna sometimes. The prosecutor read actually this text message exchange word for word. And I want us to listen to it because a lot of people say this isn't how normal young men, 22-year-olds, talk to each other. Was this fabricated? Was it fabricated by the FBI? What's going on here? Is this a red flag? And I want to analyze this with you and give you my take on whether this is fabricated or real or what this text message exchange means. But this is the text message exchange itself. Take a listen.
On September 10th, 2025, the roommate received a text message from Robinson which said, "Drop what you're doing. Look under my keyboard." The roommate looked under the keyboard and found a note that stated, quote, "I had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and I'm going to take it." Police found a photograph of this note. The following text exchange, then took place. After reading the note, the roommate responded, "What? You're joking, right?" Robinson, "I am still okay, my love, but am stuck in Orem for a little while longer yet. Shouldn't be long until I can come home, but I gotta grab my rifle still. To be honest, I had hoped to keep this secret till I died of old age. I am sorry to involve you." Roommate, "You weren't the one who did it, right?" Robinson, I am. I'm sorry. Roommate, "I thought they caught the person." Robinson, "No, they grabbed some crazy old dude, then interrogated someone in similar clothing. I had planned to grab my rifle from my drop point shortly after, but most of that side of town got locked down. It's quiet, almost enough to get out, but there's one vehicle lingering." Roommate, "Why?" Robinson, "Why did I do it?" Roommate, "Yeah." Robinson, "I had enough of his hatred. Some hate can't be negotiated out. If I am able to grab my rifle unseen, I will have left no evidence. Going to attempt to retrieve it again. Hopefully they have moved on. I haven't seen anything about them finding it." Roommate, "How long have you been planning this?" Robinson, "A bit over a week, I believe. I can get close to it, but there is a squad car parked right by it. I think they already swept that spot, but I don't want to chance it." Robinson again, "I'm wishing I had circled back and grabbed it as soon as I got to my vehicle. I'm worried what my old man would do if I didn't bring back Grandpa's rifle. IDEK if it's had a serial number, but it wouldn't trace to me. I worry about prints. I had to leave it in a bush where I changed outfits. Didn't have the ability or time to bring it with. I might have to abandon it and hope they don't find prints. How the F will I explain losing it to my old man? Only thing I left was the rifle wrapped in a towel. Remember how I was engraving bullets? The F in messages are mostly a big meme. If I see notice bulge UWU on Fox News, I might have a stroke all right. I'm going to have to leave it. That really effing sucks. Judging from today, I'd say Grandpa's gun does just fine, IDK. I think that was a $2K dollar scope. Wink, wink. Robinson again, delete this exchange. Again, Robinson, my dad wants photos of the rifle. He says Grandpa wants to know who has what. The feds released a photo of the rifle, and it is very unique. He's calling me, RN, not answering. Robinson, since Trump got into office, my dad has been pretty diehard MAGA. Robinson, I'm going to turn myself in willingly. One of my neighbors here is a deputy for the sheriff. Again, you are all I worry about, love. That came from Robinson. Roommate, I'm much more worried about you. Robinson, don't talk to the media, please. Don't take any interviews or make any comments. If any police ask you questions, ask for a lawyer and stay silent. The search for Robinson.
It's sickening. It's so sickening. And people are saying that this exchange doesn't sound normal. It doesn't sound like the way that two normal 22-year-olds would two normal 22-year-old dudes would text back and forth. They're saying it's weird, it's not realistic. Well, first of all, I don't think that these two individuals are normal 22-year-old dudes. I think that they're at the very least gay. One of them identifies as transgender. They're into really weird demonic sexual fetishes, really demented stuff. They're part of the furry community. They're also communists. So I'm not sure that they would be a good example of how two normal 22-year-old dudes talk to each other. It actually strikes me when I read it, it doesn't sound to me like the way that two straight dudes talk to each other, but it does kind of sound like the way that two flamboyant dudes talk to each other. So I don't know that I have the same exact red flags. There are some allegations online that the FBI made this up and that it was some kind of cover-up that the FBI is staging. That seems pretty far-fetched to me. That doesn't seem realistic. Listen, you know I'm not particularly conspiracy theory minded. I'm willing to let the truth lead me. The facts lead me to the truth, I should say. It doesn't seem like there's any rational or logical evidence that substantiates the allegation that the FBI made this up. The FBI would have to prove that they subpoenaed probably the phone carrier in order to even present something like that in court, which they obviously did because the prosecutor had it. So it doesn't seem realistic that that would be fabricated. If it was fabricated, and again, I would let the facts lead me to the truth, it seems more likely that Tyler Robinson and Lance Twiggs would fabricate something like that, even if it's not actually fabricated, that they would stage a conversation like that if the trans boyfriend did have some kind of foreknowledge of the attack in order to try to prevent any legal repercussions falling on the trans boyfriend. So that seems to me more realistic, or not even realistic. That seems to me more plausible than the FBI making it up. It doesn't seem plausible to me that the FBI would make this up. They don't really have any motive to do that. It does seem that here's how I will say it. If I were the FBI at this moment, I would certainly be investigating whether this exchange was an effort by Tyler Robinson and Lance Twiggs to obfuscate any kind of foreknowledge or complicity participation by Lance Twiggs. That's what I would do if I were the FBI. I would make sure that this was not some kind of obstruction of justice effort by these two individuals, because I have to tell you, my first reaction when I read this text message exchange was not to question the veracity. My first reaction when I read this exchange was not to say, oh, that's weird. That doesn't sound realistic. That must be fake. That must be written by boomer feds. That wasn't my first reaction. My first reaction was I was kind of surprised that this text message exchange made it appear as if this transgender boyfriend knew nothing. Maybe he knows nothing. Maybe he had no foreknowledge. Maybe he wasn't complicit in any way. Maybe he's as shocked as the rest of the world. I don't know. But that would kind of surprise me. That would kind of surprise me given who followed him on social media, that some of these radical transgender cell members followed not Tyler Robinson, but Lance Twiggs on social media. That would surprise me. If I were the Federal Bureau of Investigation right now, if I were Utah county prosecutors, I would be investigating very closely what the transgender boyfriend knew and when he knew it. That's my analysis of the veracity of the text messages, whether they're fabricated or whether they're real, is I would investigate the trans boyfriend more. And probably the FBI is doing just that. Probably Utah County prosecutors doing just that. One of the most galling reactions to these takes on these response to these text messages came from the mainstream media. ABC News reporter Matt Gutman called the text message exchange between Tyler Robinson and his transgender boyfriend touching. Take a look.
We have seen an alleged murder with such specific text messages about the alleged murder weapon, where it was hidden, how it was placed, what was on it, but also it was very touching in a way that I think many of us didn't expect. A very intimate portrait into this relationship between the suspect's roommate and the suspect himself, with him repeatedly calling his roommate who is transitioning calling him my love, and I want to protect you, my love. So it was this duality of someone who the attorney said not only jeopardized the life of Charlie Kirk and the crowd, but was doing it in front of children, which is one of the aggravating circumstances of this case. And on the other hand, he was, speaking so lovingly about his partner. So a very interesting and, as Pierre said, riveting press conference, David.
It was time.
What is wrong with him? What is wrong with him? First of all, he's a liar. The word protect was never used in this text message exchange. Matt Gutman should be fired. He should be fired. I don't care if he apologized. I know he later apologized and said that he used inexcusable language. That's not an accident. You didn't misspeak. You stated something that is absolutely appalling. It was touching how the killer of Charlie Kirk texted his transgender lover about it. This man should lose his job. I am far, far past the point where I'm worried about cancel culture. Some people are like, oh, if we socially punish people who are celebrating Charlie's death, dancing on his grave, that's going to come back to bite us. We've already been canceled. We've already been debanked. We've already been censored. We've already been depersoned. The left's already done all that. This is not cancel culture. It's self-defense. The mainstream media has been complicit in vilifying, dehumanizing Republicans and conservatives and Christians and Trump supporters. They bear responsibility for this hatred that Tyler Robinson harnessed as motivation to murder Charlie Kirk. There's a panel on CNN that said something that, if possible, might have even been worse. This panel on CNN said that the shooter was motivated by his lover or by his MAGA family not accepting his trans lover. Take a look at this.
But here, I think he also, I don't believe he was motivated politically. I think this was motivated emotionally. I think this was a emotionally stunted person who literally, when I say it this way, just hear me, tried to defend his significant other, not trying to defend some ideology.
Although I do think there's clearly an ideological difference. That's why I played about what they said about the family. I mean, the ideological difference that he was reacting to wasn't just Charlie Kirk. It was also maybe his dad. I mean, his father was, according to him, MAGA. So that conflict was there, clearly.
But this is a young man who's dating a person in transition. And I'm a conservative father.
That's Montel Williams, by the way, talking to Abby Phillips, suggesting that this was because Tyler Robinson's father was MAGA and didn't accept his trans lover. These people are despicable. They're despicable. What we're going to do right now for the rest of the show is we're going to unmask the person, the people behind the radical transgender communist group Armed Queers that the FBI is currently investigating. And the people behind this group, well, you may or may not be surprised by what we're about to discuss. Before we discuss that, I want to give a shout out to Cove Pure, one of today's sponsors. The state of Utah and the state of Florida both just passed bills to ban fluoride in the water supply. Why are all these states suddenly doing a massive U-turn on fluoride when they've been adding it to our water for the past 80 years? Good question. You probably don't want to answer it. Well, RFK Jr. has been warning us about fluoride for a while. The government now admits to the reality that fluoride is actually linked to lower IQ. In a study done by JAMA Pediatrics, it's one of the top medical journals, scientists found that fluoride levels over 2 milligrams per liter of water caused more than a 2-point drop in children's IQ scores. Well, as you know, my husband and I have 2 young children, and that is why I have a Cove Pure purifier literally right next to me here in the office. I'm super excited to partner with Cove Pure. I hope y'all give them a warm welcome to the Liz Wheeler Show family. Cove Pure is a water filtration system that sits on your countertop. You don't have to drill any holes or call a plumber to set it up. You just fill it with tap water, plug it in, and it gets straight to work. Their ClearWave reverse osmosis technology is lab certified to remove up to 99.9% of impurities in your water. Anything that isn't water, meaning fluoride, arsenic, forever chemicals, all of that gets filtered out, leaving you with pure water. And let me tell you, once you try Cove Pure water, you're never going back. Plus, what I love about Cove Pure is it lets you have water exactly the way you want it, whatever temperature you want. You just push a button. You want cold water? Got it. Hot? Got it. Warm? Got it. Whatever. You got it. And if you happen to like fluoride, if you're a big weirdo, that's totally fine. That's your right. There are tons of ways you can still get that through toothpaste or mouthwash or whatever, but the government should never force you to ingest it in your tap water. So take back your right to choose what type of water your family is drinking. Visit covepure.com/Liz. And for a limited time only, you'll get a special discount of $200 off Cove Pure. That's covepure.com/Liz. And you'll get $200 off. I highly recommend it. It's actually crazy and disgusting what is in our tap water. And this is the best way to protect your family from that. All right. So yesterday, Kash Patel, the director of the FBI, I should say, said that in the Discord group chat that Tyler Robinson was a part of, it was in this Discord group chat that Tyler Robinson admitted that he had killed Charlie Kirk. Kash Patel said that there were more than 20 people in that Discord chat. Therefore, more than 20 people, upwards of 30 people, knew about Charlie Kirk's murder and who committed this murder, potentially before law enforcement did. This is Director Patel. Take a look.
The FBI investigating the Kirk assassination as part of this broader pattern of anti-religious, anti-Christian violence.
We are investigating Charlie's assassination fully and completely and running out every lead related to any allegation of broader violence, and we're producing results on that we'll disclose when appropriate.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Let me just ask you a few questions about that, if I could. Sure. Reports have suggested that the FBI is investigating a broader network of groups that may have had some knowledge of the shooter's plans. Can you give us any details on that, following up what you already said in public? How's the FBI working to find other potential accomplices, folks who may have known about the shooter's plans, folks who may have encouraged him? Any update on any of that?
So in terms of what we do for an interrogation perspective, we go and reach out to the family and community immediately. And we've conducted those investigations and interrogations with local law enforcement, and we're continuing to do that because those closest to the suspect are going to hopefully know the most about the suspect and his beliefs and his ideology. On top of that, unfortunately, it has been leaked that there was a Discord chat, and for those unfamiliar with it, it's a gaming chat room online that the suspect participated in. So what we're doing, we've already done, is serve legal process, not just on Discord, so that the information we gathered is sustained and held in a evidentiary posture that we could use in prosecution should it be decided to do so. And we're also going to be investigating anyone and everyone involved in that Discord chat.
Okay, very good. I see the public reports that the Discord thread had as many as 20 additional users. It sounds like you're trying to run down all of that to see if that's accurate, who else may have been on that thread, what they may have known. Is that fair to say?
It's a lot more than that, and we're running them all down.
It's a lot more than 20?
Yes, sir.
And you're running all of that together?
Every single one.
Yeah, fantastic. Let me just turn to the broader question here of anti-religious, anti-Christian violence. Let me just give you a few stats that I'm sure that you're all too familiar with.
In addition, the Deputy FBI Director, Dan Bongino, went on Newsmax to confirm that the FBI is investigating potential broader network of people who may have known about Tyler Robinson's plan to assassinate Charlie Kirk. And Bongino said that there have been significant developments in this investigation. This is Bongino.
Out there in the public space that a significant amount of the digital evidence we acquired in this case was on Discord. Now, listen, this does happen on a lot of platforms, and the difference between platforms and publishers is there's a different level of responsibility legally for them. However, individuals on that platform, it is not a safe harbor Rob, to go on a platform and say, well, I said it publicly on said platform, so this I can threaten to kill or harass someone. It doesn't work that way. We'll go anywhere to look for you if we believe you committed a crime, and if we can gather enough PC, probable cause, and surpass that legal hurdle and get process done on you and arrest warrants and search warrants, we'll do it. I said this morning, and I'll say again, this is not the end of this investigation. It's not even the end of the beginning of the investigation. We've just started. The fact that we have a suspect, and everybody's obviously innocent until proven guilty in this constitutional republic we have, but we are investigating a potential broader network of people who may have known, and we've had some, I think I can tell you comfortably on your show tonight, we've had some developments in the case actually right before I came on the air. So there have been some significant developments in the case. You'll be the first to hear about it, and we hope to have more on that. Have to be careful about it right now, but we hope to have more on that within the coming hours.
Now, we know via the New York Post that the FBI is investigating a group called Armed Queers Salt Lake City. We mentioned them on the show yesterday. And I want to today dive deeper into this group, because when you realize who's behind this group, it tells you a lot about what this group is all about and what we need to do. Law enforcement, the federal government needs to do to stop what happened to Charlie Kirk from ever happening again. This group, Armed Queers, of course, deleted their social media presence immediately after news broke that Charlie Kirk had been assassinated. That's fairly suspicious behavior in and of itself. And one of the reasons it's suspicious behavior is because what the mission statement of Armed Queers is, which is to train gay, queer, and transgender people to arm themselves and fight against capitalism and the American system. Now, to me, that's a call for violent overthrow of the U.S. government, which is against the law. Based on that alone, I would bring charges against this group, because we cannot allow wannabe terror cells to train people, to prepare, to plot, and wait until they actually carry out an act of terror to stop them. We have to stop them before these acts of violence are committed. And if your mission statement is to fight against capitalism in the American system, and you're arming yourselves to do that, then you're not talking about fighting at the ballot box. You're not talking about fighting in the court of public opinion. You're talking about violence. And that's not allowed under our current legal code here in the United States. Now, Armed Queers, this group, has 6 principles. The first principle is the armed and militant protection of queer and trans communities. The second is the end of capitalist oppression and exploitation. The third is the creation of a socialist society. The fourth is trans liberation. And the fifth and sixth are the abolition of prisons and police. Again, we are long past the point where we can read these sentences and these words. They're very deceptively framed. We can't just dismiss them as euphemisms. This is a call to overthrow the government of the United States. And it's a group that arms trans people to do this. One of the leaders of this group said at an event this past July, 2 months ago, that we are a queer and trans-led Marxist-Leninist organization. So there you have it. It's not my inference. That's the reality of what they are. So that brings us to the leader of this group, a person by the name of Ermaya Fanayan. And I mentioned this person yesterday, and I mistakenly called Ermaya Fanayan she yesterday because that's what the name indicates. Well, I was mistaken. Breaking news, Ermaya Fanayan is a biological male. Ermaya Fanayan is a man who identifies now as a woman after having quote-unquote transed in high school. What's funny is yesterday, when we were doing show prep for the show, I said to my producer, I said, Ermaya Fanayan, what kind of name is that? It sounds like a fake name. It sounds like the name of one of these weird gaming fairy people when they want to reject their parents and their family in Western civilization, that they make up some like really weird, bizarre sounding name. That's what Ermaya Fanayan sounds like. Well, it turns out that was exactly right. Ermaya Fanayan is a transgender identifying person who was born a biological man. And Ermaya Fanayan, aside even from his association with Armed Queers, and we'll get to who's behind Armed Queers in just a moment, Urmaya Fanayan is deeply entrenched in the Democrat political apparatus. I'm not just talking about the leftist apparatus, the Democrat Party political apparatus. This is a picture of Urmaya Fanayan on stage with Democrat Senator Elizabeth Warren. You can see that on the screen. This is back, 2019? 2019, standing on the stage with Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren has her arm cozily around Urmaya Fanayan's shoulder. We have to wonder what Elizabeth Warren's statement would be now. What was she embracing? What was she embracing? Urmaya Fanayan worked on Elizabeth Warren's campaign. Urmaya Fanayan was also on the payroll of the Utah Democrat State Committee. This individual, and this point is extremely important, which is why I'm making it up front before we unmask who is behind Armed Queers. It's extremely important for us to understand that Urmaya Fanayan is not a fringe player on the left, that Urmaya Fanayan is an accepted mainstream figure in the Democrat Party, both at the state level in Utah and at the federal level, working on Elizabeth Warren's campaign and being cozily hugged by Elizabeth Warren on stage, which means Elizabeth Warren deliberately chose to honor this man who is pretending to be a woman back in 2019. So what are the beliefs of this man, Urmaya Fanayan, who pretends to be a woman? Well, Urmaya Fanayan tells us himself in his own words, if your war, he says, is with trans people, then this is what's going to happen to you. Take a listen.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Hello to the committee. My name is Urmaya Fanayan. I am a member of Armed Queers Salt Lake City, and I want to tell you I have been organizing against bills such as this one for 10 years now.
Pause it for 1 second, Spencer.
The first time I have ever had to plead to the legislature.
Just for context here, two things are important to note. This is testimony by Urmaya Fanayan against a bill in Utah that would prohibit biological men who identify as women from going into women's bathrooms. This is what Urmaya Fanayan is testifying against. He is also, by the way, an immigrant from Iran, a refugee from Iran, he calls himself. But that's what he's testifying against. He wants biological men to be allowed in women's bathrooms. You can continue playing the video.
The legislature to stand with trans people in the face of growing attacks against us. I was only 15 years old. At 15 years old, I had to decide whether I was going to do homework that day or advocate for my right to use the restroom in peace. Let me ask you, was I a threat at 15 years old?
Yes.
And here we are, still having to take time out of our busy days. As bills such as this one insist trans people are a threat that should be legislated away, its proponents are capitulating to a propaganda machine, led by the very forces who have been against all that's benefited women since we can remember. Where were they when reproductive freedom was on the chopping block? Where were they when domestic violence service providers are having to compete for resources? Where are they when women are without health care all across this state? They are not only nowhere to be found, but are also the very cause behind these issues as well. But somehow trans women, some of the most vulnerable and exploited women among us, are the problem? Sorry, I am completely unconvinced by the anti-trans hysteria. Sorry, Kira, I am completely unconvinced by the emotional anecdotals.
Address to the chair, please.
And let me just say this. If your war is with trans people, you will lose. Since the first time I have come to you about trans rights, solidarity with the trans community continues to grow to this day. And I do not wish to be back here 10 years from now. Stand with the trans people of this state. Thank you.
If your war is with trans people, he says, you will lose. Well, Urmaya Fanayan went on to say that for tangible change to take place in our society, violent protests and rebellions must take place. Take a listen.
Some people say that it takes a violent protest to get people to listen. Do you agree, or should they remain peaceful?
I agree. I absolutely agree. You know, I'm a member of the LGBTQ community, and our liberation and our rights came after the Stonewall riots. That's something that a lot of people don't like to talk about, is that, the LGBTQ movement started with Stonewall riots. I wouldn't even be able to be a student at this school if it wasn't for a violent riot that took place within a span of 3 days. So I absolutely agree that sometimes violent protests and really riots and those kinds of loud rebellions must take place for tangible change.
Violent protests and rebellions must take place for tangible change. So suddenly, perhaps it's not so surprising that Ermaya Fanayan runs a group dedicated to Marxism, to the violent overthrow of the U.S. government. But here's where it becomes even more interesting. That in and of itself, by the way, is grounds for the FBI to investigate him, as I hope they are. We know that Armed Queers is currently under FBI investigation to determine whether they had any foreknowledge of Tyler Robinson's assassination of Charlie Kirk. I don't know if there is a direct or indirect connection between Armed Queers Salt Lake City and Tyler Robinson. I don't know. I don't know whether this is just part of the widened net that the FBI director and the deputy FBI director describe, that now they are going to be investigating these radical groups that are calling for violence, that are calling for the violent overthrow of the United States, that are calling for violence against conservatives. Even if it were just that, it is necessary, it is critical, it is warranted. I suspect that we are going to find out in the days and the weeks to come that there is a direct or indirect connection between Armed Queers Salt Lake City and either Tyler Robinson and Lance Twiggs. I don't know what that connection will be. I don't know if members of Armed Queers followed Tyler Robinson or Lance Twiggs or vice versa. If they followed members of Armed Queers, I don't know if Tyler Robinson and his trans boyfriend attended workshops or events organized by Armed Queers. I don't know what that connection will be. Maybe the FBI already knows. Maybe Utah law enforcement already knows. We don't know. What we know is that the founder of Armed Queers says that in order for tangible change to take place, violent protests and rebellions must happen. And perhaps it should come as no surprise that Ermaya Fanayan is also an organizer for the Party of Socialism and Liberation, the PSL. Now, if you were watching this show in July, and I know a lot of you were, but there are also a lot of people with us today who are newer to the show. I'm going to give you a little refresher of what we talked about in July when the violent anti-ICE riots broke out in Los Angeles in July. The mainstream media was very quick to do what they're doing now, which is to gaslight you and to try to form your perception of those riots. They told you that they were peaceful. They told you that it was a grassroots effort of people who had grievances against President Trump's mass deportations. And that was not true. None of that was true. It wasn't peaceful. There were violent rioters who were throwing bricks at police officers and at buildings. They were breaking windows at Los Angeles law enforcement precinct buildings. They were lighting cars on fire, pouring gasoline over the engines of cars and lighting them on fire. They were waving Palestinian flags. They were wearing the Hamas keffiyeh neckerchief that indicates that you are pro-terrorism. This was anything but a peaceful protest. And of course, the mainstream media knew that. They lied to you because they hope that you're stupid. They hope that you weren't looking at the videos of these riots themselves. But they were neither peaceful nor were they grassroots. This was not an organic gathering of people who had a grievance against their government. This was coordinated. It was organized. It was funded. And we helped unmask the organizations and the people funding the organizations that actually staged these riots. And one of the key figures behind these violent anti-ICE riots is an almost billionaire by the name of Neville Roy Singham. You've maybe never heard the name of this guy before. He's not as familiar to people on the right as, say, a George Soros is. I would argue that Neville Roy Singham is more powerful than George Soros in this moment. He's certainly more nefarious than George Soros. Neville Roy Singham, a quick backgrounder on him. He is a former technology mogul. He sold his company a couple decades ago for three quarters of $1 billion. When I say he's almost a billionaire, I think he sold it for $700 million. After he sold his company for almost $1 billion, he moved to China. He now resides in Shanghai, China. Now, you and I know this very well, that here in the United States, we have a lot of people from other countries who live in our country. Some of these people are legal, some of them are not legal. That doesn't happen in China. If you are a long-term resident of China, then you are there because the Chinese Communist Party allows you to be there. So the fact that Neville Roy Singham resides in Shanghai, China, is your first red flag as to this individual. But Neville Roy Singham has a long train, a long digital footprint, a long history of being an open communist. This is not something that I'm inferring from his writing or his behavior. Neville Roy Singham is not only ideologically a communist himself, meaning he has embraced that ideology, he now uses his immense wealth to fund groups, specifically in the United States, that are motivated by communist ideology. And the purpose of these groups is to incite civil unrest. So Neville Roy Singham, for example, funds the group Students for Justice in Palestine, this pro-Hamas, anti-Israel group that caused some of the violent pro-Hamas, anti-Israel riots that we saw on college campuses just a few months back. Neville Roy Singham also funds the Party for Socialism and Liberation. The Party for Socialism and Liberation was one of the groups that was a key player in organizing the violent anti-ICE riots. They were the ones that printed a lot of the posters that showed up at these signs. They were the ones that organized these so-called rapid response teams, the people who, isn't it funny how as soon as something political happens, you have this busload of protesters as if they were just waiting to be told a location by whoever's organizing them. They just show up, these paid protesters. The Party for Socialism and Liberation is one of the groups that produces these paid protesters at whatever venue and for whatever cause the radical left deems it necessary to stage a riot against. Neville Roy Singham is part of this. Neville Roy Singham, by the way, that's his legal name. His friends know him as Roy Singham. He's married to the co-founder of Code Pink, Jody Evans. Code Pink, of course, are these radical feminists. They brand themselves as being anti-war activists. They're kind of the really crazy-looking topless feminists that'll march around like as if they're like militant, right? They'll march around as if they're soldiers, but they're not wearing any clothes to protest wars. That's Jody Evans, Code Pink. They are a radical, revolutionary, so-called anti-war organization who used to speak out against communist China, but funnily enough, after Jody Evans married Roy Singham, suddenly Code Pink started speaking highly of the Chinese Communist Party and not speaking out against the human rights abuses that the Chinese Communist Party is inflicting on the Uyghur Muslims, for example. Neville Roy Singham, the allegation against him, it seems pretty clear to me, the allegation against him is that he acts in lockstep with the Chinese Communist Party, that it is the Chinese Communist Party's agenda to incite civil unrest in the United States in order to take over as the world dominant superpower. And Neville Roy Singham takes an active part in their propaganda, not only paying these groups to incite civil unrest and violence in the United States, but by propagating their literal propaganda. And the example of that I'll give is he shares an office in Shanghai with a Chinese Communist Party propaganda firm whose goal is to brainwash the global public about the Chinese Communist Party. This man was investigated by the FBI back in the 1970s for being part of a subversive group. He funds to the tune of more money than you and I will ever see combined. He funds not only the Party for Socialism and Liberation and Students for Justice in Palestine. He funds an organization called the Answer Coalition, which is a key player in a lot of these operations. For example, when we discussed yesterday Armed Queers' trip to communist Cuba and the group NOC, it's so confusing, all these groups. They use them like a shell game. The group that organized the trip to Cuba, NOC, was also a member of that group. NOC was the Roy Singham groups, was some of Roy Singham groups. This man is highly, highly tied in to these subversive organizations that are currently organizing violence in the United States. So that brings us back to Armed Queers. That brings us back to the founder of Armed Queers, Ermaya Fanayan, this biological man who now identifies as a woman. This man, Ermaya Fanayan, is associated with the Party for Socialism and Liberation, is an organizer for the Party of Socialism and Liberation, an organization that is funded by Neville Roy Singham. This man, this billionaire who is buddy-buddy with the Chinese Communist Party, who won't live in America, who's using his immense wealth to destabilize the United States with violence. When we unmasked Roy Singham back in July, it sparked congressional investigations. The House Oversight Committee submitted document requests telling Roy Singham that he needed to turn over evidence that would show how his finances were behind the anti-ICE riots. On the Senate side, Senator Josh Hawley also announced investigations into Roy Singham, but 2 months later, we haven't seen any results of this. And I understand that Congress is like a slow-moving beast, but this man needs to be held accountable because this man is almost singularly behind these groups, and the FBI needs to understand this. The FBI, if you're investigating, if you're dropping a wider net and investigating these radical trans groups, you have to understand all roads lead back to Roy Singham. Take Zohran Mamdani in New York City, for example. He's also tied to Roy Singham. Not only is Zohran Mamdani the communist candidate for mayor of New York City, not only is he tied to Students for Justice in Palestine, which is funded by Roy Singham, a member of, or a woman who was associated with his campaign, Alicia Singham Goodwin, is Singham's niece. Roy Singham's sister, Shanti Singham, donated to Zohran Mamdani's campaign. Roy Singham is there. He's always there. He's quiet. He's not a public-facing figure, but his money is funding subversive efforts in the United States of America. This is what I think of when I hear Stephen Miller's promise that in the name of Charlie Kirk, we will dismantle these leftist terrorist organizations. This is what we're dealing with. Start at Roy Singham and follow every dime of his money, and it will lead you to the most insidious, the most demonic, the most coordinated, organized, funded efforts to destabilize our country and kill us. Now, here's the thing. I don't understand why we don't outlaw communism in our country. And hold on a second, before you react to that. It shouldn't be illegal for you to, as an individual, buy into a communist ideology if you want to be a demonic idiot. I suppose you can feel persuaded by the communist ideology. I'm not advocating for thought police per se, but I don't understand why we as a nation don't illegalize organized groups that advocate for communism and the violent overthrow of the United States. There was a video we had prepared for the show yesterday that I didn't end up getting a chance to play, in which a member of Armed Queers, and Spencer, was that Ermaya Fanayan, who said, this revolution is not something that we will vote in. I'm not sure if it was that individual, but it was someone associated with this group who said, this is not a revolution that we vote in. When you are a group that is committed to the communist ideology, you're not advocating that communism happen through people's votes. You're not advocating that communism be imposed on the people through the democratic process. You're advocating for an ideology that violently destroys the civil institutions in our country and then topples the governmental structure afterward. You don't have a constitutional right to do that. You might have a constitutional right. You might be protected under First Amendment rights if you personally, again, want to be persuaded to buy into an evil ideology. But there's no law in the books that says that we have to allow communist groups. And I don't understand why we don't outlaw these groups. Again, yesterday on the show, I gave a couple of examples of specific laws that we actually already have. This is not even something that Congress necessarily has to invent. The Communist Control Act of 1954 declared that the Communist Party was a threat, and it effectively outlawed it because it restricted its legal rights. The Smith Act of 1940 criminalizes advocacy for the violent overthrow of the U.S. government. These are already laws in the books. Use them. Use them. A group that intends to incite imminent lawless action, that's against the law. Use them. I don't understand why we think that there's some inherent morality in allowing a vast network, a conspiracy against the United States funded by a billionaire who has defected to a communist nation, that there's some inherent morality in the freedom to do that. There isn't. It's like the drag queen story hours. I don't understand the train of thought, the David French train of thought that says, oh, well, you know, there's some morality just in the freedom to do that. That's one of the blessings of liberty. No, it's not one of the blessings of liberty to allow violent, transgender, Marxist, communist groups plot to kill us. There's no morality in that. And I don't understand why we as a nation don't do something about this. I know that the free speech absolutists are going to push back on this. But where is it? Did our founding fathers intend for communist conspiracy groups, this coordinated effort to destabilize the United States, did they intend to protect the freedom to do that? Because if so, I haven't read it in any of the founding documents that I have read, and I have read extensively on the founding of our country. Give me your best argument. But we have experienced a paradigm shift in our country where it should be perfectly clear to all of us that if we don't dismantle the coordinated, funded, organized, violent leftist apparatus that wants to and intends to harm us and overthrow the U.S. government, then that will happen. The question left to us as voters, as constituents, to our law enforcement, to our lawmakers, to our leaders at large, is how we're going to do that. And I want actual, concrete answers to this. Because I'm unwilling to live in a reality where Charlie Kirk's assassination was a news story for a week. Law enforcement conducted their investigation. Charges were filed. The FBI says they're looking into other radical groups, and then the world moves on. That's not enough. We have to demand more. We have to demand that our country's house be cleaned of communist ideology. We talked earlier in the week about how this needs to be done in colleges and universities, but it needs to be done through law enforcement as well. And law enforcement needs to start by following every dime that has come from the pockets of Neville Roy Singham. Send this to your member of Congress. They need to know. I want to take a moment, too, to thank you for watching and listening to this show. It's because of you that we're able to keep producing content like this. Blaze TV exists because people like you refuse to settle for mainstream media lies, spin, clickbait headlines, all the destructive propaganda that's part of the Democrat apparatus's mass propaganda campaign. Blaze TV has never been about one voice or even one company. It's about a movement of people, you and I together, who refuse to sit on the sidelines and are instead willing to take a stand. Join Blaze TV today if you are not already a part at blazetv.com/Liz. You can get $20 off right now for as low as $8 a month on the annual plan. You can be a part of shaping the future. Every single one of you who are a part of Blaze TV makes what we do here together every day possible. We are affecting change in our country. We are the players who are fighting for good in the battle of good versus evil. That's blazetv.com/Liz. Please join us. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube as well. YouTube.com/Liz Wheeler, on X.com/Liz_Wheeler, on Spotify. We're The Liz Wheeler Show. Make sure you hit subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. Thank you for watching today. Thank you for listening. I'm Liz Wheeler. This is The Liz Wheeler Show.